Okay, thanks for coming along. So just to let you know that we are broadcasting this as well as a webinar. So this will be recorded. The camera is pointed here, so it can't see you in the audience, but it will see if you come to the front, and it will hear you as well if you say anything. If you want to ask something privately afterwards, that's perfectly fine. There'll be a chance for that. Okay. So thanks for joining us. In this session, we're just going to give you a general introduction really to the different postgraduate programs that we have here in psychology in Lancaster. And then there's a chance for some questions and answers, and Megan Liddell, who's sitting at the back, is going to come forward at that point, and she can give you a perspective of a current master's student in our department, what that's like, and what it's like especially for progressing from an undergraduate here at Lancaster, which she did, to a postgraduate degree as well. Okay, so I'll just give you a general introduction to the department from this postgraduate perspective, and then a very brief overview of the different postgraduate courses we have. And then we have several further sessions in this week, which is actually a little bit over a week in terms of introducing in a bit more detail each of the individual programs. So this is really about an introduction and overview of our programs. At 3 o'clock after this, depending on how long this goes on, we'll see how much break there is, then Margriet Groen is going to come and talk to you about doing a PhD in psychology here at Lancaster. Then after that, later this afternoon, we have the developmental psychology masters where Gert Westerman will talk to you about that program. And then on Thursday, we have 2 further sessions. Thursday at 3 o'clock, an introduction to the developmental disorders master's degree, and then 4 o'clock, introduction to the psychological research methods. And then next week, we have our introduction to the psychology of advertising masters. Okay, so just give you a broad overview of our postgraduate programs. The reason why I'm here is that in our department, I'm called the Chair of Recruitment and Public Engagement. So I deal with sorting out recruitment of undergraduates and postgraduates into our department and making sure people have the information that they need. But we also deal in events to do with public engagement as well, so general talks to schools and to members of the general public. So, first of all, you might want to know why do postgraduate degree at all? And there are actually lots of good reasons for doing a postgraduate degree. People choose to do a postgraduate program for all sorts of reasons, but there's a lot of evidence that it is a really good thing for your personal development, your academic development, and also your career prospects. So one of the reasons why people choose to do a postgraduate degree is to progress your career path. And my observation of myself and of the students that do our postgraduate programs is that there's a real strong development in those postgraduate year or years where people develop these higher level skills and a much greater depth of content, and an additional perspective to enable you to apply your skills transferably, to apply them in workplaces, all kinds of different workplaces. Evidence is really strong that if you do a postgraduate degree, then your chances of employment and good employment are really enhanced. So 79% of graduates are in high school employment compared to 66% of graduates. That was in the UK government's last survey of the labour market statistics in 2019. Real boost to your employability. But there are other reasons why people might want to do a master's or a PhD program, and that's because you have a real deep personal interest in the subject. And that's a completely valid reason for doing a postgraduate degree, to get that extra enriched knowledge of your subject. And it's also can provide you with a stepping stone onto other higher level qualifications, for example, a PhD, or to help you access some of the psychology programs for doctoral level training, for example, clinical or educational or forensic. So it's a useful stepping stone to have a master's to get onto those programs as well. That's why you might want to do a postgraduate degree, but why should you do it at Lancaster? Well, the reason is that we have a really strong postgraduate team here in Lancaster. Didn't mean to do these one by one, but here are all the people that you'll encounter if you come here to do a postgraduate degree. And there in the bottom right corner is Gina Fisher, who's sitting at the back of the room here. And Gina Fisher helps us with all our recruitment activities and can answer any questions you have about postgraduate programs and point you in the right direction to have your questions answered. But the other really important people here are in the top left. This is Nadine and Claire, and they work in our postgraduate office in the departments here in psychology in Lancaster. And they're available all the time to support and answer questions for our postgraduate students. So really strong support here. The bottom left is Marguerite Grun, and she'll be talking later about PhD programs. And she's the director of our postgraduate research committee to make sure that there's a really strong support and that our students are properly integrated throughout the department and all its functions. And lots of other people appearing here who are also really important in your experience in your teaching and your support around psychology programs at postgraduate level. Another reason why Lancaster would be a good place to do a postgraduate program is because of our facilities. So in the most recent assessment of our research excellence, we were found to be 100% internationally excellent or world leading in the research that we do here at Lancaster. So that means if you study psychology at postgraduate level here, you're coming into contact with people who are international standards in terms of their research, pursuing research agendas that are world leading or internationally excellent. And also, if you're doing your degree already here in psychology at Lancaster, you will have seen our facilities, some of them at least, but we have our own building, which is just for research and training. And postgraduate students become much more involved in this research, in this higher level of training, and you have more access to those facilities. So here's a picture of the building, the Hewell building, and you might know that the ground floor of this building is dedicated to infant and child testing, and the top floor is dedicated to adult testing. And there's all sorts of neurophysiological, neuroscientific, and behavioral observational techniques that we employ in this building to support our psychological research. So some of our labs are really, especially the newer labs, are really cutting edge in terms of the technology that we have and the methods that we use. For example, electroencephalography, EEG, we use this with infants, children, and with adults to look at the brain signal responses to different stimuli. We use something called FNIRS, which is functional near-infrared spectroscopy, and that's a particularly useful technique for studying children's brain activity. Basically, this sends near-infrared light into the brain to look at the blood flow response of the brain to different stimuli as well. Again, to pick up different activity of different areas of the brain. Especially useful for children, and it's used quite regularly in our studies with infants, for instance. We also have something called TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. This is where you place a magnetic current, sort of magnetic field over the skull, and that can change the activity of the brain just underneath. Then you can figure out which part of the brain is doing which function. We also have transcranial direct stimulation, which is basically where you run a current across the surface of the brain, which can change the activity just under, across the skull, and it can change the activity going on in the brain just under the skull there. We have virtual reality labs and eye tracking labs. If you've done your undergraduate here, you might have experienced some of these facilities already. If you do postgraduate, then you have the opportunity to work in one or more of these labs for a really detailed project. And another important feature of our delivery of our resources here at Lancaster is our world-leading child testing labs. So this is a picture of the reception area of the ground floor of this building, which is just dedicated to children. We have full-time support there for bringing parents and children in, making them feel comfortable and supporting the kind of research projects we do with developmental work. So we have a whole range of different research strengths here in psychology at Lancaster as well. And that's another important feature of our department, because it means whatever master's program or PhD program you choose, there's real expertise in that area of research. So this is a graphic showing the different kinds of organizations and the different kinds of research topics that we conduct here at Lancaster. Roughly speaking, our department is grouped into four clusters, one around language and cognition studies, that's sort of in yellowish, one around social processes in red, one around infancy and early development, and the final one around perception and action. We also work with all sorts of national, international, and interdepartmental here in the university organizations, because it's really important that the best research is done in an interdisciplinary way. And again, if you do a postgraduate degree at Lancaster, you'll come into contact with researchers in other areas, for example, computing, data science, linguistics. And again, you can shape that expertise according to your interests. Another important feature of doing a postgraduate is just how global the outreach of a department is. And here at Lancaster, we really do have national excellence as well as international excellence in terms of our research and the kinds of collaborations that we have around the world. So you know that Lancaster is one of the top performing universities in the UK. In terms of international reach, Lancaster is ranked 122nd in the world, which is really good for a newer university. And we're in the top 50 universities in the world in terms of our international outlook. And that's a measure dependent on the number of international students, the number of international collaborations that people in the university have. And this graphic shows all the different collaborations that people in our department, psychology here at Lancaster, have with collaborators around the world. And so we collaborate with people in North America, throughout Europe, some in South America, Central and Southern Africa, Australasia, and Asia, especially East Asian countries as well. And again, as a postgraduate student, you have the opportunity to become much more involved in these kinds of projects that reach cross-country boundaries. So here's our philosophy, which was written by Rob Davis, one of our lecturers in the department, when he was reflecting on what it means to be a postgraduate student in our department and why it's really important for us to have postgraduate students, how you provide us with value and make our jobs and our department worthwhile. So Rob says we have graduate students from all over the world and from all different kinds of backgrounds. We have parents, people who work, people who are changing careers, want the time to decide if this is what they want to do, or know what they want to do but want to build the skills that they need. One example Rob Davis pointed out to reflect this philosophy was a student that wrote to him, actually, to say that she went for a job interview at a market research company, and she was asked to say how she would analyze and interpret the kind of evidence that company used. And she said she got the job because she knew what she could say, and she knew what she could say because she had learnt with us. So she developed those transferable skills and had that perspective for how those skills do actually transfer across different contexts, different environments. We're also serious about research, as Rob Davis says, and we're very good at it in terms of our international excellence and world-leading research profile. But at the same time, we do pay attention to every individual, and we welcome the diversity among our students as well, and the diversity in their ambitions. Okay, what we attempt to deliver, and that's what we receive from working with you as a postgraduate in our department. So all our postgraduate programs are approved by the ESRC, and that's a badge really to indicate the quality of the training that you get in our postgraduate programs. So what it means in practice is that you would be eligible for funding from the ESRC for a doctoral degree after taking part in one of our master's courses. It prepares you sufficiently such that you could apply for funding from the ESRC for doctoral studies. The mark of quality, it means that you get to this high level of research training as a consequence of doing any of our master's courses. Another important feature, as I showed you in terms of how many people are actually involved in our master's and postgraduate teaching, is that there's lots of staff support here for postgraduates. You'll have an academic tutor. If you're an undergraduate here, there's that system as well for the undergraduates. We also have it at the master's and the PhD level. And we also have that dedicated office just for postgraduate students. And we also have dedicated space and facilities for postgraduate students as well, so that the department really is their home. I think as a postgraduate, the college structure at Lancaster University becomes a little bit less important in terms of your social life, and you become even more attached to your department as part of your identity. And we support that by providing you with the facilities and the space within the department, such that you really have a strong sense of belonging. And you also have a range of module choices as well during your master's programs. And you also have the opportunity to take just about any master's level course within the university and follow that as well. Not as part of your degree, but alongside your degree, if that's of interest to you. It's possible to study any of our master's degrees full-time or across 2 years. If you study across 2 years, then you pay the part-time fees, and you distribute your courses, the different modules as part of your degree program across those 2 years, so that it can fit alongside other obligations or responsibilities that you have. So currently we offer 4 master's degrees here in Lancaster in psychology. We have the developmental disorders masters, and the aim of this is to give you a detailed and deep understanding of disorders that occur during human development, and importantly compare typical and atypical development. And we have the developmental psychology masters as well, which will give you advanced knowledge of theory and evidence of how humans change over time. And for those 2 master's programs, they fit really well with the facilities we have for infant and child testing. So you'll be doing quite a lot of your program in that ground floor of our research building. We also have the psychological research methods masters, and the aim of this program is to build up advanced research skills in psychology for you. And that is ideal for preparing for PhD or doctoral research programs in clinical, forensic, or educational psychology, bringing that extra skill base to take into the workplace or to take on to further psychological work. We also have the psychology of advertising masters. This is really unique in our portfolio because you don't need an undergraduate psychology degree to do this psychology of advertising masters. This provides an interface between theory and practice of advertising and its psychological foundations. So we have placements that are really built into this program, Psychology of Advertising. And the course director of this program is someone who works in industry, in the advertising industry, part-time in the university and the rest of the time in industry. And he has loads of contacts and links students up to different companies so that you can actually go and do your research projects with those companies. That's been really good for networking opportunities and for career advancing as well in that. And because this is not just for psychology undergraduates progressing onto a master's degree, it's a really interesting community of students that take this master's as well. The people from all sorts of different backgrounds take part in that master's. And so you get all these different perspectives from marketing, from sociology, from computer science, sometimes with the psychologists who are there as well. That's a really nice environment to teach and to learn. So as I said, doing a master's really enhances your career prospects. And That's certainly true here at Lancaster in our psychology programs as well, because we build in the transferable skills you're going to need in the workplace into the degree programs. We also have a psychology employability program. If you're an undergraduate here already, then you'll know about this scheme. We also have this at the master's level, dedicated towards master's level students. And that can give you relevant work experience alongside your master's program. And we also have various internships that you can take part in as well, where you work in a lab to build up your experience of particular research methods as well. We have careers advice built into our postgraduate programs, but also available around the university more generally. And our students go on from their postgraduate degrees to really outstanding and varied career prospects. Lots of really interesting alumni from our postgraduate community and from all these 4 programs. When you do a postgraduate, you get all these employability skills, a whole range of them. So you're building on your undergraduate skills, and really, I think that extra year, like on a master's program, really makes a big difference in being able to flexibly apply those skills. So you're building up further your numeracy skills, you're building up your language skills, some more practice on reading and writing and assessing, appraising information. You build up some more IT skills as well, using advanced techniques, advanced equipment. Much more self-management, because there's a growing degree of self-motivation and independent working that's built into the master's and PhD programs, but also working together. So we build in these projects around group work as well. And so you can have the benefit of other people's perspectives joined together with your own. And also thinking and problem solving at a much more advanced level than at undergraduate level is possible here. All those skills really are recognized and appreciated by employers. If you do a postgraduate degree here at Lancaster, there are many studentships and bursaries that you may be eligible for. So here's just some of the schemes that are available. There's more information at this link at the bottom. So in particular, if you are a Lancaster University student already or have been, then you can get some reduction on your fees, up to 20% off your fees for your master's or PhD. There's also the Lancaster Global Scholarship, which is based on your entry grades, and that can give you £5,000 off your fees in your first year of study. There's also the Lancaster Master's Scholarship, again, giving you up to £5,000 off your fees. And there's also the Lancaster Sanctuary Scholarship, which the university set up, particularly in response to the crisis in Ukraine, where if you have refugee humanitarian protection status or are a Ukrainian citizen, then you can have full fees as well as contribution towards your living costs, and I think accommodation provided as well. So if you apply to Lancaster, then you will be considered for bursaries and the ones which are most advantageous to you. In terms of entry requirements for our postgraduate programs, typically speaking, we look for a first class or a 2-1 degree or the international equivalent of those. But please ask us about alternatives. Okay, so there are all sorts of routes onto our master's degrees. So if you're not currently confident of heading for a 2-1, then don't dismiss this out of hand. Do just talk to us about it. Okay. You need an English language IELTS overall score of 7 or higher, but there are also routes to support your language if your English language isn't quite at that level yet. So again, do talk to us about this. And as I said, non-standard applications are really welcomed, because we do look for diversity in our student population. And we want to bring that here to Lancaster for everyone's benefit. If you have any questions at any time, there's a dedicated email address for postgraduate admissions, which is pgadmissions@lancaster.ac.uk. And there's more information on how to apply for postgraduate study in this link here as well. How to apply? Well, you go to this link and it will just take you step by step through the process.
Yeah.
There is a £40 administrative fee to submit your application, but if you're a Lancaster University student, you don't have to pay that fee. This is basically a registration onto the administrative systems of Lancaster University. If you're a student here already, you're already within that system, so you don't have to pay the £40. So if you are a Lancaster University student, and there's no £40 administrative fee, you can just apply for free. It's an easy application process. You don't have to provide any references if you're a student here, and you don't need to provide your academic transcript as well, because that's just linked up. And also, you have this guaranteed offer scheme, such that we will guarantee you a place on our master's program if you meet the entrance requirements. Okay? Guarantee there. And you also have a guaranteed scholarship automatically awarded to help with your fees as well, as an alumnus of Lancaster University. So if you want more information, then come to the further sessions that we have over the next week or so. But also at any point, you can chat to a student via Lancaster Connect on that link. So if you have any questions at any point about Lancaster in general or studying postgraduate in particular, you can go there. You can also chat with a member of staff. So you can have a one-to-one talk with a member of our postgraduate program staff. If you want to do that at any point, then just send Gina an email at g.fisher1@lancaster.ac.uk, and she will then put you in touch with the person who can give you the best information around your particular interests. And we also have a postgraduate psychology office. You can contact them at any time as well, postgraduate.psychology@lancaster.ac.uk. And you can also have a look at our master's brochure via this link too. Okay. By the end of this session, there's some time for questions now and some reflections from Megan Liddle, our master's student. But if you can give us some feedback as well on this session, if there's stuff you still want to know, then that would be really helpful. So via this link. Yeah, Megan, do you want to come down? We only have one microphone between us. So, yeah, do you just want to introduce yourself and say what you're doing currently and what you did before?
Mm-hmm. I'm Megan. I am on the Psychological Research Methods master's course, and I did an undergraduate here literally last year in just pure psychology. So it was a very easy stepping stone for me.
So are there any questions for us about general postgraduate things, or if you can think of particular questions, we can try and answer those. Yeah, Jack, it's Jack, isn't it? And oh, I'm really sorry. I would say that the generic one is the psychological research methods. Megan, would you say so?
Yeah, so the way it tends to work is if you want to kind of go down the developmental or the disorders route, then you would go into those and they're more specific. But like the one that I'm on, the psychological research methods, does tend to be a pretty general overview of like, so for example, you get to choose like a few modules on each of in each term. So in term one, for example, you could choose like a literature review, and then you get to choose like what you want to do that literature review on. Or you can choose like the developmental kind of route and again do that, but not be on the developmental course. And then again in term two, you get to pick again what you would like to do. So like, for example, there are options like mental health or like developmental disorders is an option, or a qualitative kind of course. So that's like, that tends to be like the general psychology course, is that you're doing it and you get to pick what bits you want to go into a little bit further, whereas obviously with the developmental disorders, you have to take those modules, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think for all the master's programs, there's a general skills base that we want to build up, but then there's the opportunity to specialize in your particular area. So there's some overlap between the programs, as Megan was indicating, but then they diverge around the particular specialist courses and particular interest in developmental or advertising. Any other questions from the room? Yeah. Yeah, so this is a question about the links that the department has internationally. Is there an option to go and work with some of those partners? Yes, there is an opportunity to do that. So when you come to your master's research project, for instance, second half of the program, it's about the second half, isn't it? Then, because our international collaborations are a really important part of the way that we conduct research, but you may well join a construct a research project there. That's something you would discuss when you're talking about the kind of project that you would do as part of your master's degree. And then there might be opportunity to go and visit and collect data in another country. So Katie Alcock, one of the senior lecturers in our department, she does quite a lot of work in Central Africa, for instance, and Southern Africa, and also in East Asia. And so she had some master students who did a project where they collected data in Southern Africa and in East Asia to look at cultural effects on children's perspectives on gender knowledge, actually. Yeah, there is a chance to involve yourself in those international collaborations. Say anything on this? No, Megan doesn't want to say anything on that. So what are you doing your project on?
So I am hoping to, obviously it's very early days, so you kind of go through the dissertation process of picking a supervisor in your first, like the second half of your first term, and then you start kind of reaching out to them in your second term once you know who you're working with. So very early days for me, but I am hoping to build on my undergraduate dissertation, which was basically studying doing a qualitative analysis in an interview study on women with autism. And basically, I interviewed 7 women with autism and basically asked them kind of to talk me through their diagnosis process. And then I used a type of qualitative analysis called IPA, which basically meant that I could create categories based on what they had brought up. And see what was kind of the most important features of their diagnosis process to them. So I'm kind of hoping to build on that, but I think I might be kind of going into a bit because the researcher that I've been paired with is very interested in like curiosity and stuff like that. So I think I might be kind of adding in an element of whether the autistic women like are as curious as neurotypical women and stuff like that. So kind of quite interesting, I think.
You said you use something called IPA. What's that?
So yeah, if any of you are interested in qualitative analysis and didn't feel like you got to do too much of it at undergraduate, in postgrad you're very much like able to kind of take that up as a passion, which is very much like one of my areas of interest. So in second term there's like a whole module about like qualitative analysis, and you get to work with Chris, who's basically his whole research is all based around qualitative analysis. And IPA is I'm going to struggle to say this, but it's basically interpretive phenomenological analysis, which is a bit of a mouthful, hence why I just shorten it to IPA. But it's basically, yeah, just taking categories, but based on what they've said rather than based on what you are interpreting it as, if that makes sense. So it's very like from the participant rather than kind of putting words into their mouth. So it's very interesting, but yeah.
So are there any more questions from the room? don't think we've got any online. I'm not sure that was working. It wasn't working yesterday when I tried it. But, if you have questions online, you can send them through if you can figure it out. Otherwise, follow one of those routes for asking us more questions. Well, I've got you here, Megan. So you've done, well, about half the master's degree now. But how do you think it takes you forward in terms of the kind of skills that you've built up compared to your undergraduate degree?
So I think that I've definitely got a lot more confident in terms of my ability to problem solve by myself. I think at undergraduate, you're very much kind of dependent in some senses on lecturers telling you how to do things and what to do. And I think at masters, it definitely requires you to be a lot more independent and utilize the resources that are available to you, both online, but also friends on the course and stuff like that. But so for example, with statistics, there's a lot of statistics on my course, which is the psychological research methods, because you basically end up taking 2 statistics modules rather than just one, which you would in the psychological disorders or developmental courses. And so I think with statistics, for example, I'm not the strongest at statistics. I'm much more onto the qualitative side of things, but obviously you have to do it. So I think the kind of the perseverance and making sure that you're keeping on top of it and making sure that you're utilizing the resources that are available to you has kind of helped me continue in statistics despite really wanting to run the other way. So yeah, I think that that's one of the main things that I've kind of built on since my undergraduate, is definitely being more able to kind of be independent and persist and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, so I can back that up because I taught Megan the analysing and interpreting psychological data, one of our master's courses, which does involve some statistics and from a bit of a different perspective than you get at undergraduate level. And yeah, Megan did not run away at all during the course. Yeah, and what we try to do in that course is to work on the the community that you can get at that postgraduate level. So students working together collaboratively on their research and sharing their problems and problem-solving skills and getting over them as a group. Any of that work?
Yeah. I think that one of the nicest things about the master's degree that I've found so far is that there are so many fewer people than on an undergraduate degree. If you're all Lancaster students or have been to other universities, psychology tends to be a very popular undergraduate degree. I think there are about 300 or more in my year undergraduate, so it was a lot of students. So I never really felt like I connected with any of the lecturers except my DIS supervisor, because they had so many other students to kind of talk to, and they knew other students as well. Whereas at a master's level, it's very much more there are only 50 of you or so it's much smaller groups, and I feel like I know everyone on my course. I kind of can recognize them, and we work together much closer than I did at my undergraduate. And also I'm able to I know the department a lot better, and I'm able to go and talk to lecturers when I need to. So I think that that's a bonus to the masters, which I've really enjoyed.
Any questions coming up? Okay, well, the next session will start in about 20 minutes. And that's on doing a PhD in psychology here at Lancaster. But thanks very much, Megan, for giving us that unique student perspective on doing a master's here. And yeah, thanks for coming along and joining us.